The neon lights of Nova Prime flickered weakly as rain poured down in steady sheets, reflecting the cold indifference of the city. Towering spires of steel and glass loomed overhead, casting long shadows over the narrow alleys below. In one such alley, a group of Imperial enforcers stood clustered around a decrepit door, their sleek black armor glinting faintly under the dim streetlights. They had been sent to arrest an old human named Elias Thorne, a name that meant nothing to most people, but had recently caught the attention of the Galactic Empire. Elias lived alone in a crumbling apartment building on the outskirts of the megacity. To anyone who bothered to glance his way, he appeared like any other relic of humanity's faded glory, frail, unremarkable, and forgotten. His hair was thin and gray, his face lined with wrinkles etched deep by years of hardship. Yet, back at the Imperial headquarters, Elias was thrown into a cold, sterile cell deep within the facility. The enforcers didn't bother to question him further. They were more interested in the strange orb they had confiscated from his apartment. It now sat on a metal examination table in a high-security lab, surrounded by advanced scanning equipment and a team of anxious scientists. The orb was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with an iridescent glow, shifting between colors that seemed to defy logic. At times, it appeared almost liquid, rippling gently as though alive. But what truly fascinated and unnerved the scientists was the energy signature emanating from it. Their instruments couldn't fully analyze it, and every attempt to probe deeper resulted in bizarre malfunctions. Screens flickered, circuits shorted out, and one particularly bold experiment caused an entire section of the lab to lose power for several minutes. Despite these setbacks, the Empire wasn't about to give up. They believed the orb held secrets that could strengthen their grip over the galaxy. Rumors began spreading among the staff that the artifact might contain ancient technology, or even weapons capable of toppling entire civilizations. Others whispered darker theories, suggesting it could be cursed or tied to forces beyond comprehension. Meanwhile, Elias remained eerily calm in his cell. He sat cross-legged on the hard floor, his hands resting loosely on his knees. His eyes were closed, but he wasn't sleeping. Instead, he listened intently to the distant hum of machinery and the muffled voices of those working tirelessly to unlock the orb's mysteries. Occasionally, he would smile faintly, as if amused by their futile efforts. In the lab, frustration mounted. One scientist, a brilliant but reckless engineer named Dr. Siler Venn, decided to take matters into his own hands. Ignoring protocol, he activated a device designed to amplify energy signals. As soon as the machine connected with the orb, something extraordinary happened. The room filled with a blinding light, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When the brightness faded, the orb projected holographic images onto the walls. Images of star maps, complex equations, and alien symbols no one recognized. "What is this?" gasped Dr. Venn, his voice trembling with awe. It's showing us things we've never seen before." But the excitement quickly turned to panic. Without warning, the orb emitted a powerful pulse of energy that knocked everyone in the lab unconscious. Alarms blared throughout the facility as backup teams rushed in to assess the situation. When the scientists finally came to, they found themselves sprawled across the floor, disoriented and shaken. What happened next left them speechless. Each person who had been near the orb during the incident reported experiencing vivid visions of distant planets, towering cities made of light, and beings so advanced they seemed godlike. Some saw glimpses of their own futures, while others witnessed scenes from the galaxy's forgotten past. The visions varied, but one thing was clear. The orb had somehow imprinted itself onto their minds. Elias, still sitting quietly in his cell, seemed unaffected by the chaos. When guards arrived to check on him, he simply looked up and said, "Curiosity can be dangerous, especially when you don't understand what you're dealing with." His words sent chills down their spines. For the first time, the Empire realized they might have underestimated the old man, and the artifact he guarded. Whatever the orb truly was, it was far more than just a relic, and Elias knew far more than he let on. The aftermath of the orb's activation left the Imperial headquarters in disarray. Scientists and enforcers alike were shaken, not just by the physical effects of the energy pulse, but by the vivid, haunting visions that lingered in their minds. Some refused to return to the lab, claiming they couldn't bear the weight of what they had seen. Others became obsessed, desperate to uncover the meaning behind the alien symbols and star maps etched into their memories. The Empire's leadership, however, saw only opportunity. To them, the orb wasn't a mystery to fear, it was a tool to exploit. Dr. Siler Venn, still recovering from the incident, found himself at the center of the chaos. Despite his earlier recklessness, he was determined to prove himself. He spent hours poring over the data collected during the experiment, searching for patterns or clues that could explain the orb's behavior. His colleagues warned him to proceed with caution, but Venn dismissed their concerns. "We're on the brink of something incredible," he insisted. "This isn't just some artifact. It's a gateway to unimaginable power." Meanwhile, Elias remained locked away in his cell, seemingly indifferent to the commotion unfolding around him. Guards stationed outside reported that he rarely spoke, spending most of his time sitting quietly with his eyes closed. Occasionally, they would catch him humming softly under his breath, a tune that sounded both ancient and strangely familiar. When questioned about the orb, Elias offered cryptic responses like, "It doesn't belong to you," or "You're playing with fire." His calm demeanor unnerved even the toughest enforcers, who began to suspect there was far more to this old man than met the eye. Back in the lab, tensions reached a breaking point. Another team of scientists attempted to replicate Dr. Venn's experiment, hoping to stabilize the orb's energy output. This time, they approached it cautiously, using weaker amplifiers and protective shielding. At first, everything seemed under control. The orb glowed steadily, projecting faint images onto the walls. But then, without warning, it surged again, releasing a wave of energy that shattered every screen in the room and sent equipment crashing to the floor. When the dust settled, the scientists discovered something alarming. The orb had changed. Its surface now pulsed with a deeper, more intense light, and the alien symbols projected onto the walls appeared sharper, as if urging them to act. One scientist, trembling with fear, whispered, "It's alive." Word of the incident quickly reached the highest levels of the Empire. Fearing a public backlash, or worse, rebellion, the Emperor ordered the orb secured in a containment chamber designed to neutralize hazardous materials. But even within the heavily fortified chamber, the orb continued to defy logic. It emitted low-frequency vibrations that resonated through the facility, causing strange phenomena: flickering lights, sudden temperature drops, and an eerie silence that fell over entire sections of the building. Elias watched all of this unfold from his cell, his expression unreadable. When guards brought him food, he barely touched it, instead focusing on the distant hum of the orb. One evening, as a young officer delivered his meal, Elias finally broke his silence. "They don't understand," he said softly, almost to himself. "The orb isn't a weapon or a prize. It's a test, a question waiting to be answered." The officer hesitated, unsure how to respond. Before he could say anything, Elias added, "And they're failing miserably." As days passed, the Empire grew increasingly desperate. Rumors spread among the staff that the orb was influencing those who came near it, planting ideas and emotions that weren't their own. Some claimed they heard whispers in languages they didn't recognize. Others swore they saw shadowy figures moving just beyond the edge of their vision. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain: the orb wasn't done revealing its secrets, and Elias knew exactly why. The Empire's patience was wearing thin. Despite their best efforts, the orb remained an enigma, a puzzle they couldn't solve no matter how many resources they threw at it. Frustration boiled over during a high-level meeting in the Imperial Council chamber. Leaders argued loudly, blaming one another for the lack of progress. Some demanded that the orb be destroyed before it caused further damage. Others insisted on doubling down, convinced its secrets would grant them unparalleled power. Amidst the chaos, one voice cut through the noise. "We're missing the obvious," said Commander Jarek Voss, a veteran officer known for his pragmatism. "The old man knows something. He hasn't said much, but everything he has said points to him being more than just a random human." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Voss. It was a valid point. Elias Thorne had been oddly calm throughout the ordeal, almost as if he expected this chain of events. His cryptic remarks and serene demeanor suggested he wasn't merely a victim caught up in the Empire's machinations. No, Elias knew far more than he let on. And the Council decided it was time to find out exactly what. Against protocol, Elias was brought before the Emperor himself. The throne room was vast and imposing, its golden walls adorned with banners depicting the Empire's conquests. At the center sat Emperor Kaler IV, a towering alien with shimmering blue skin and piercing red eyes. Flanked by advisors and guards, he exuded authority. But even he couldn't hide the flicker of curiosity in his gaze as Elias was led forward. "Speak, human," the Emperor commanded, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "Tell us what you know about the artifact." Elias stood tall despite his frail appearance, meeting the Emperor's gaze without flinching. For a moment, he said nothing, simply observing the opulence around him. Then, with a slow nod, he began to speak. "The orb is not yours to command," he said firmly. "It belongs to the Precursors, an ancient race that once ruled this galaxy long before your empire existed. They were architects, explorers, creators, and destroyers when provoked." Murmurs rippled through the room. The Precursors were little more than legend, mentioned only in fragmented myths and half-forgotten tales. Yet here was a man claiming direct knowledge of them. And the artifact seemed to confirm his words. "I was part of a group called the Keepers," Elias continued. "Our purpose was to safeguard remnants of the Precursors' legacy, ensuring they wouldn't fall into unworthy hands. The orb contains not just knowledge, but also immense power. Use it wisely, and it could unlock wonders beyond imagination. Abuse it," and he trailed off, letting the weight of his words sink in. "And what?" pressed the Emperor, leaning forward slightly. Elias met his gaze evenly. "And it will destroy you." The room erupted into heated debate, but Elias ignored them, his attention focused solely on the Emperor. "You've made a grave mistake bringing me here," he added quietly, "but perhaps there's still time to correct it." For the first time, doubt flickered across the Emperor's face. Could this frail old man truly hold the key to understanding the orb, or was he bluffing, trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage? Either way, one thing was clear. Elias Thorne was no ordinary prisoner, and the Empire's fate now hung precariously in the balance. The revelation of the Precursors and the orb's true nature sent shockwaves through the Empire. While some viewed it as a divine opportunity to cement their dominance, others saw it as a ticking time bomb. One wrong move could bring ruin upon them all. The council chamber became a battleground of conflicting ideologies, with factions vying for control over both the artifact and Elias Thorne himself. Emperor Kaler IV sat silently on his throne during these heated debates, his sharp red eyes scanning the room. He trusted none of his advisors fully. Each had their own agenda, hidden beneath layers of false loyalty. Some argued that the orb should be dismantled immediately, fearing its power might attract rebellion or external threats. Others pushed for aggressive experimentation, convinced they could harness its energy to fortify the Empire's borders and crush dissent once and for all. But there was one voice that stood out among the rest, that of Senator Lyra Voss, a cunning politician known for her ability to manipulate situations to her advantage. She rose from her seat, smoothing the folds of her crimson robe as she addressed the Emperor. "Your Majesty," she began, her tone measured yet persuasive, "this orb is not just a weapon. It's a symbol of our superiority, our right to rule this galaxy. Imagine what we could achieve if we unlocked its secrets. We could rewrite history itself. Her words stirred murmurs of agreement from certain members of the council, but Commander Jarek Voss, her distant cousin and rival, was quick to counter. And what happens when we fail? He snapped. What happens when the orb decides we are unworthy? Do you really want to risk destroying everything we've built? The tension in the room was palpable. As arguments grew louder, Elias remained seated quietly at the edge of the chamber, guarded by two enforcers. His calm demeanor only fueled the paranoia spreading among the council. To them, his silence felt like mockery, as though he were watching ants scurry around an anthill, knowing full well how fragile their world truly was. Outside the throne room, whispers of rebellion began to take shape. News of the orb had leaked beyond the palace walls, igniting curiosity and fear among the Empire's citizens. Underground networks buzzed with speculation about its origins and purpose. Rebel leaders saw an opening. If the Empire faltered while trying to control the orb, it would create chaos and opportunity. One such leader, Calvera, intercepted fragments of classified reports detailing the orb's activation and the visions it had induced. Determined to seize the artifact for herself, she rallied her forces, planning a daring raid on Nova Prime. Her goal wasn't conquest, it was survival. If the Empire mishandled the orb, it could unleash devastation across the galaxy. Better, she reasoned, for the rebels to claim it than let it fall into reckless hands. Back within the palace, betrayal simmered beneath the surface. Senator Voss secretly negotiated with rogue scientists who believed they could bypass Elias entirely and unlock the orb's secrets without his guidance. Meanwhile, Commander Voss covertly reached out to rebel sympathizers, hoping to broker a deal that would protect the galaxy from imperial greed. Through it all, Elias watched silently, his expression unreadable. When a guard leaned close to ask if he needed water, he simply shook his head and muttered, "Let them play their games. They'll realize soon enough where the real power lies." As alliances shifted and plots thickened, one truth became undeniable. The orb had already begun reshaping the galaxy, and Elias Thorne held the key to its ultimate fate. The Empire's grip on Nova Prime was beginning to crack. News of the orb, and its mysterious connection to Elias Thorne, had spread like wildfire, igniting hope among those who had long suffered under imperial rule. For years, the rebels had fought a losing battle against the Empire's overwhelming might, but now they saw an opportunity, a chance to turn the tide in their favor. Calvera, the charismatic leader of the rebellion, stood atop a rocky ridge overlooking her makeshift camp. The wind whipped through her dark hair as she gazed at the stars above, her mind racing with possibilities. She had spent countless nights poring over stolen intel about the orb, piecing together fragments of information that painted a picture both thrilling and terrifying. If the artifact truly held the power Elias claimed, it could be the key to overthrowing the Empire, but only if they acted quickly. "Are you sure about this?" asked Torin, her second in command, breaking her train of thought. He was a grizzled veteran with scars crisscrossing his face, evidence of decades spent fighting for freedom. "Storming Nova Prime is suicide. Even with the element of surprise, we'll be outnumbered 10-1. Kale turned to him, her green eyes blazing with determination. "We don't have a choice," she said firmly. "If we let the Empire control the orb, they'll use it to tighten their stranglehold on the galaxy. This isn't just about us. It's about everyone who's ever been crushed under their boot. We can't afford to wait." Torin hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, but we'll need more than guts. We'll need a plan." And so the rebels devised a bold strategy. Using smugglers' routes and hidden tunnels beneath the city, they would infiltrate Nova Prime under the cover of darkness. Their primary objective wasn't to engage the Empire directly. Instead, they aimed to extract Elias and the orb, believing that neither should remain in Imperial hands. What they didn't anticipate, however, was how fiercely the Empire would resist, or how unpredictable Elias himself would prove to be. The night of the raid arrived, cloaked in storm clouds that masked their approach. Rebel forces moved swiftly and silently, disabling security systems and neutralizing patrols with precision. As explosions rocked the outer perimeter of the Imperial stronghold, chaos erupted within. Enforcers scrambled to respond, leaving gaps in their defenses that the rebels exploited mercilessly. Kale led a small strike team deep into the facility, guided by hacked surveillance feeds that showed Elias's location. When they finally reached his cell, they found him sitting cross-legged on the floor, seemingly unperturbed by the commotion outside. Two enforcers lay unconscious near the door, victims of his apparent nonchalance, or something else entirely. "Elias Thorne," Kale said, stepping forward. "We're here to get you out." Elias looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "You've come a long way from nothing," he replied calmly. "I'm not going anywhere." Kale frowned, glancing at her team. "What do you mean? You think staying here is safer? The Empire doesn't care about you. They'll tear you apart trying to unlock the orb's secrets." Elias chuckled softly, rising to his feet. "It's not about safety," he said. "It's about timing. Everything has its moment, Kale. Mine isn't now." Before she could argue further, alarms blared throughout the facility. Reinforcements were closing in, forcing the rebels to retreat. As Kale reluctantly backed away, Elias called after her. "Tell your people this. If they want to survive, they'll listen when I speak next." The rebels escaped with their lives, but without the prize they sought. Yet as they regrouped in the shadows of Nova Prime, Kel couldn't shake the feeling that Elias's words carried weight far beyond what she understood. Whatever role he intended to play, it was clear he wasn't done. Not yet. The rebels' failed raid on Nova Prime left Calvera and her team reeling, but it also deepened their resolve. They retreated to a hidden base nestled in the jagged mountains of a remote moon, far from Imperial reach. There, amidst flickering holograms and hastily repaired equipment, they tried to make sense of what had happened, and why Elias Thorne refused to leave with them. Kale paced back and forth in the dimly lit war room, replaying every moment of their encounter with Elias in her mind. His calm demeanor, his cryptic warnings, and his refusal to budge despite the chaos around him. It all pointed to something bigger than any of them had anticipated. She stopped abruptly, turning to face Torin, who sat slumped at the table nursing a cup of bitter stem tea. "He knew," she said sharply, breaking the silence. "He knew we were coming." Torin raised an eyebrow. "You think he's working with the Empire?" "No," Kale replied, shaking her head. "If he was, he'd have told them about our plans. He let us get close, too close, for a reason. He wanted us to see something." Her words hung heavy in the air as the rest of the team exchanged uneasy glances. None of them could deny the strange pull Elias seemed to exert, even from afar. It wasn't just his knowledge or his connection to the orb. It was something deeper, almost magnetic. Whatever secrets he carried, they weren't meant for the Empire, or perhaps not yet. Meanwhile, back at the Imperial stronghold, Elias remained unfazed by the heightened security measures implemented after the rebel attack. Guards stationed outside his cell reported that he spent most of his time staring at the walls, occasionally murmuring to himself in languages no one recognized. Yet when Commander Jarek Voss arrived to question him, Elias greeted him with startling clarity. "You're running out of time," Elias said without preamble, his voice steady and commanding. "The orb isn't a trophy to be claimed. It's a key, and unless you understand what it unlocks, you'll destroy yourselves trying." Voss frowned, leaning against the cell bars. "What does it unlock?" he demanded, though part of him dreaded the answer. Elias smiled faintly, his gaze distant. "The precursors built networks, stargates scattered across the galaxy, connecting realms untouched by time or space. These gates lead to places of unimaginable wonder and danger. The orb is the map, the cipher, the permission slip. Without it, the gates remain dormant, but misuse it, and the safeguards will activate. Safeguards, Voss pressed, his tone sharp. The precursors didn't trust blindly, Elias explained. They designed fail-safes to prevent unworthy civilizations from abusing their creations. If the wrong hands attempt to use the orb, entire star systems could vanish in an instant. You've already felt its power. What do you think happens when it's pushed too far? Voss swallowed hard, the weight of Elias's words sinking in. He had seen firsthand how unstable the orb could be, how easily it overwhelmed even the Empire's best scientists. Could it really unleash destruction on such a scale? And if so, why hadn't the Emperor listened to Elias's warnings? As Voss wrestled with these questions, Elias added quietly, "There's more. I wasn't just a keeper, I was chosen. The precursors granted me communion, allowing me to survive centuries while others faded away. My purpose was always to guide the next step, to ensure their legacy served the greater good. Not conquest, not greed, but understanding." For the first time, Voss saw Elias not as a prisoner, but as a guardian burdened by unimaginable responsibility. As he left the cell, his thoughts churned with doubt. Was the Empire truly worthy of the orb's power, or were they destined to repeat the mistakes of those who came before? Back at the rebel base, Kale received a message encrypted with coordinates and a single line, "Come alone." It was signed only with a symbol resembling the orb's glow. Despite the risks, she knew she had no choice but to follow it. The truth was calling, and Elias Thorne held the answers. Kelvera stood at the edge of a dense forest, her breath visible in the cold night air. The coordinates Elias had sent led her to this remote planet, a desolate place where towering trees stretched toward an overcast sky, their gnarled branches casting long shadows on the ground. She tightened her grip on her blaster, scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. Though she had come alone as instructed, every instinct screamed that this could be a trap. "You're punctual," came a voice behind her. Kale spun around, weapon raised, only to find Elias Thorne standing calmly a few feet away. His hands were tucked into the pockets of his worn coat, and his expression was unreadable. Despite his frail appearance, there was an undeniable aura of authority about him. "Why did you bring me here?" Kale demanded, lowering her weapon slightly but keeping it ready. "If you wanted to talk, you could have done it back at my base." Elias chuckled softly. "Would you have trusted me then? Here, we're safe, from both your rebels and the Empire." He gestured toward the woods. "Come. We don't have much time." Reluctantly, Kale followed him deeper into the forest. They walked in silence until they reached a clearing bathed in pale moonlight. In the center stood a crude stone pedestal, atop which rested a small fragment of what looked like the orb, its surface shimmering faintly despite its size. Cal's eyes widened. "What is this?" she asked, glancing between Elias and the fragment. "A piece of the Precursor's legacy," Elias replied. "It's not the full orb, but it contains echoes of its power. I brought you here because you need to understand what's at stake, not just for your rebellion, but for everyone." He paused, studying her intently. "The Empire believes the orb is a weapon. Rebels think it's salvation. Both are wrong. It's neither. It's a test. A chance for civilizations to prove they've learned from their mistakes, to show they're ready to take the next step." Kale frowned. "And if we fail, the safeguards will activate," Elias said grimly. "Entire star systems wiped out in moments. Billions dead, not because of malice, but because the galaxy cannot afford another reckless race rising to dominance." The weight of his words settled heavily on Cal's shoulders. For years, she had fought against the Empire, believing freedom was the ultimate goal. But now, faced with the enormity of what Elias described, she wondered if humanity, and perhaps even the rebels, were truly ready for such responsibility. Before she could respond, a rustling sound drew their attention. From the shadows emerged Commander Jarek Voss, flanked by 2 armed enforcers. His crimson armor gleamed faintly under the dim light as he stepped forward, his yellow eyes fixed on Elias. I thought I might find you here, Voss said, his tone clipped. The Emperor wants answers. And so do I. Elias sighed, shaking his head. You never learned, do you? This isn't about sides or allegiances. It's about survival. Voss ignored him, turning to Kale. You shouldn't trust him. He's playing both ends against each other. And you're not. Kale shot back, her hand tightening on her blaster. Your empire would burn the galaxy to ashes if it meant staying in power. Tension crackled in the air as the three figures stood locked in a standoff. Then, unexpectedly, Elias stepped between them, raising his hands. Enough. He barked, his voice carrying an authority that silenced them both. Arguing won't save anyone. If you want to fight, go ahead. But know this. While you waste time squabbling, the real threat grows stronger. What threat? Voss snapped, though unease flickered across his face. Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to the glowing fragment on the pedestal. As he touched it, images began to form in the air, visions of crumbling worlds, armies marching under black banners, and a looming shadow that seemed to consume everything in its path. This, Elias said quietly, is what happens if we fail. Now decide. Are you allies, or are you enemies? For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Voss lowered his weapon. Kale hesitated before doing the same. Whatever differences divided them, one thing was clear. The stakes were higher than either side had imagined, and Elias held the key to their survival. The uneasy truce between Calvera, Commander Jarek Voss, and Elias Thorne was fragile but necessary. Standing in the moonlit clearing, surrounded by the eerie glow of the orb fragment, they realized that their petty conflicts paled in comparison to the looming threat revealed by Elias's visions. The shadowy force consuming worlds wasn't just a distant danger, it was closing in, and time was running out. We need to act, Kale said firmly, breaking the tense silence. If what you've shown us is real, then every moment we waste puts more lives at risk. Elias nodded gravely. It's real. And it's moving faster than I anticipated. The precursors built safeguards into the stargates to protect against misuse. But those same safeguards can be exploited by forces seeking chaos. If the wrong entity gains control of the network, it could unravel everything. Commander Voss frowned, his mind racing. So how do we stop it? How do we even begin? Elias gestured toward the glowing fragment on the pedestal. This piece contains part of the map, the coordinates for the first stargate. But reaching it won't be easy. The gate lies hidden in a region of space long abandoned, guarded by remnants of precursor technology designed to deter intruders. Only someone with knowledge of their ways can navigate safely. And that's where you come in. Voss asked skeptically. Yes, Elias replied without hesitation. But not alone. This isn't a mission one person, or one faction, can handle. We need to work together. Kale exchanged a wary glance with Voss. Despite their shared goal, trust remained elusive, yet neither could deny the wisdom in Elias's words. Whatever awaited them beyond the Stargate, facing it divided would ensure failure. The journey began aboard a stolen Imperial cruiser retrofitted by the rebels. Kale led her team while Voss brought along a small contingent of enforcers loyal to him personally, a precaution against betrayal from within the Empire. Elias remained at the center of it all, guiding them with cryptic instructions and occasional flashes of insight gleaned from centuries of communion with the precursors. As they traveled deeper into uncharted space, the ship encountered strange phenomena. Fields of floating debris that defied gravity, clusters of stars arranged in impossible patterns, and bursts of energy that disrupted navigation systems. Each challenge tested their resolve and their unity. Tempers flared when decisions had to be made quickly, and old grudges threatened to resurface. But through it all, Elias maintained an unwavering calm, reminding them why they were there. At one point, during a particularly harrowing encounter with what appeared to be automated drones left behind by the precursors, Kale found herself standing beside Voss as they fought off the relentless machines. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and she saw something unexpected: respect. When the dust settled, Elias approached them, leaning heavily on a cane. His vitality seemed to wane with each passing day, as though the effort of guiding them drained him. "You're learning," he said softly. "That's good. Trust will be your greatest weapon and your only hope." Finally, after days of perilous travel, the ship emerged near a massive structure floating amidst a sea of asteroids. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen. A colossal ring-shaped construct covered in intricate carvings that pulsed faintly with light. The first Stargate. "This is it," Elias whispered, his voice tinged with awe. "The beginning, or perhaps the end." But as they prepared to board a shuttle and approached the gate, a shadow fell over the group. One of Voss's enforcers stepped forward, his hand hovering near his weapon. "Enough games," he growled. "I'm taking the orb and finishing this myself." Betrayal had found them, and now survival depended on whether they could truly unite. The tension aboard the shuttle was palpable as the rogue enforcer, Lieutenant Marduk, leveled his weapon at Elias. His eyes burned with desperation, and his voice trembled with misplaced conviction. "You've all been dancing around this for too long," he snarled. "I'm ending it now. The orb belongs to the Empire, and I'll make sure it's used to save us." Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he met Marduk's gaze with a calm that bordered on pity. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said softly. "Using the orb without wisdom will destroy everything, including yourself." Marduk hesitated for a fraction of a second, but his resolve hardened. He reached for the orb fragment tucked into Elias's coat pocket. Before anyone could react, Kale lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. The two struggled fiercely, their scuffle sending equipment clattering across the shuttle floor. Commander Voss shouted orders, trying to restore order, while his loyal enforcers moved to restrain Marduk. In the chaos, Elias staggered toward the Stargate controls, his movements slow but deliberate. With trembling hands, he activated the ancient mechanism. The massive ring began to hum, its surface rippling like liquid metal as a shimmering portal emerged within its center, a gateway to realms unknown. "This is our only chance," Elias called out over the noise. "Step through, or let fear dictate your fate." Kale broke free from the brawl, blood trickling from a cut above her eyebrow. She locked eyes with Voss, who nodded grimly. Together, they ushered the remaining crew toward the gate, leaving Marduk restrained and shouting curses behind them. As they crossed the threshold, the world around them dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and sound. On the other side, they found themselves standing in a breathtaking expanse, a realm untouched by time or decay. Towering crystalline structures stretched toward an endless sky filled with swirling colors, and the air vibrated with a sense of life beyond comprehension. It was beautiful and overwhelming. Elias stepped forward, his frail body seeming to draw strength from the environment. "This is where the precursors once stood," he explained, "where they shaped the galaxy and left behind their legacy. But maintaining balance requires sacrifice." He turned to face the group, his expression solemn. "To stabilize the network and prevent the shadow from spreading, someone must merge with the orb, become one with it. Only then can its true purpose be fulfilled." Silence fell over the group. No one spoke. No one dared to volunteer. Finally, Kale stepped forward, determination blazing in her eyes. "Let me do it," she said firmly. "It's why we came here." But Elias shook his head. "No, this is my burden to bear." Without waiting for argument, he placed the orb fragment against the central console. Light erupted around him, engulfing his form as he whispered his final words. "The future belongs to those willing to learn from the past." When the light faded, Elias was gone, but the Stargate thrummed steadily, alive with newfound energy. Through it, the group glimpsed countless worlds connected by the precursor network, each teeming with possibilities. As they prepared to leave, Kale gazed at the stars, vowing to honor Elias's sacrifice. For the first time in centuries, hope flickered brightly across the galaxy, a fragile yet enduring beacon guiding them toward unity and renewal. And so, under the watchful glow of distant suns, a new chapter began, not of conquest, but of understanding.